Anyway, my name is Ian. Like many of you, I make games, I study games, and I'm very interested in games. And I wanted to do something fun and creative with the notion of what the cloud can do for us and the opportunities we have as we think forward to where this technology is going. So I work at Amazon Game Studios, and some of you may not have even heard of us, and that's okay, because we're a new studio. I want to talk a little bit about us in just a second. So a quick agenda for today. We're going to do a brief history, a little recap of what I think consumers think of when they think of the cloud, current thinking in the market, and then hopefully some really cool stuff about where is this going and what can we do as creatives to think about what can we do with the cloud and game design. So a little bit about me. I'm a core gamer. I've made a lot of core games in the past, but I also play a lot of casual games, puzzle games, adventure games, and I play a ton of indie games. And the reason I wanted to sort of illustrate that is that we all make different types of games across different genres. And this, to me, maps almost one-to-one with what I think we're doing at Amazon Game Studios. We actually have 3 studios, 2 in Southern California and 1 in Seattle. And we see this great opportunity between the smaller and the casual games that you see on mobile and the big AAA budgets. There's a huge market in the middle, which I think is very, very exciting to me as a gamer and to me as a business person. And I think that's our goal as a studio, is to make these more crafted experiences with smaller teams that aren't AAA budgets, but that might be a little deeper, a little bit larger than what we see on some of the mobile platforms. So that's really exciting for us, and I think that's a little bit about what I'll talk to you as well. So a brief history, and this is going to be very reductive, but just to illustrate the point, I think a lot of customers, when they think about the cloud, is they think of this. It's a big storage device. It's a place where we put stuff, and then we get it when we need it. And I think that's really kind of how we've used it. And I think there's a lot more flexibility and interest in, as the technology matures, what we can do with it as a creative team. So some of the current thinking, which I'm excited about, and hopefully some of you guys are familiar with as well, is what does it feel like when you're using streaming? I think a lot of us think it's this spigot, it's kind of slow sometimes, and it's this little trickle of information. But I actually think as the technology matures, as broadband penetration increases and Wi-Fi density increases, and hopefully costs come down over time, we can be very creative with how we use that technology and make it feel a lot more powerful. And I think you're starting to see pieces of that in the market today. And let's take a look at a couple of those. So, Forza's Drivatar. I'm sure some of you have seen this. For those who don't know what Forza is, it's a very popular hardcore racing game on the Xbox platforms. So what they do with the cloud is they store all kinds of player data, and they store it and they create this, what they call a Drivatar, which basically learns how you as players play. Now just take a look at some of this stuff. The crazy things they're tracking, the line, the angle of how you enter a curve, how you enter and when do you put on the brakes. It's a crazy amount of information that they then take and they create this avatar in the game, and it basically races as you. And now what's really interesting about that is that you see people getting super competitive with these Drivatars as if they were real people. And I think this is the first step of like, how can we use the cloud and the power to do something interesting with AI that you couldn't do maybe on a normal hardware platform. Similarly, Titanfall. Now, I don't own an Xbox One because I'm still waiting for the prices to come down. Some of you might too. But I have played it, and I love this because they've used the AI in a similar fashion where they're putting all their AI thread up into the cloud. So for example, in this visual, you've got the enemies and the grunts in the top right, but also the Titan that you can command and follow you around. Hey, they behave. That is all done through the cloud, and I think it's another step of like, how can we use the power up there to harness that data and hopefully down the road even adapt it to player skills and other things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. So some of the things that we're doing at Amazon, we have some very powerful tools available to us at Amazon Web Services. One of those things is called AppStream. And I'm working, one of my teams is working on a game that is using AppStream to do something that we've never seen possible to do on the tablets before. But before we kind of kick into that, I wanted to bring up Collin Davis, who actually heads up AppStream. He's a special guest today, to talk a little bit about it so you guys can think, how is this different than what you see in the normal streaming market, and how does that change, and how can we think about that creatively?
AppStream launched back in March of this year, and we built it with the intent to provide a platform for low latency, high fidelity streaming to make it easier for you to do some of the things that Ian just described with it, that other publishers have done, and to put streaming in the cloud as a toolkit in your belts that you can use to create really cool experiences much, much more easily. Since we launched, and even before we launched, we talked to a lot of different developers about how they're building games and how they're using the cloud today. And one of the things they were really excited about is how new audiences and new players could be reached with mobile devices, and how they had all kinds of great opportunities with those new form factors. But they also came with challenges in the form of hardware constraints. And they lamented, I mean, I talked with Ian many times, how they can't deliver the experiences that they want to deliver because they're running up against those hardware constraints. And so we thought, what if we could use the cloud and the streaming technology that we had been working on to build a platform that would allow for developers to ignore hardware constraints, to be able to reach more users on more devices, but still in a very flexible way, and to be able to control where they're using streaming in a way that's appropriate for the experience that they are trying to create. And so we created the STX protocol, and that stands for Streaming Experience. It's a proprietary protocol that we built as part of AppStream. And the way that it works is, one analogy you can think of, it's kind of like having an HDMI cable from your player's device going into a very powerful computer in the cloud that you can use for offloading AI, you can use it for offloading graphics rendering, and Ian will show you some examples about how his team is using it. But the real secret sauce to it is how we adapt the video stream that's being sent down to your player's devices almost every single second in response to changing network conditions. And we do that in order to maintain a very high quality video feed that's also still very, very responsive. And we support lots of different devices. We support all of the common consumer platforms today: Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and Fire OS, of course. What you can do is you can build your application once, or build the hard parts of your application, build the complex AI calculations, the complex renderings, host those in the cloud, and stream those to any different device type using the SDK. If you pick up our SDK for iOS, for example, you can stream the same content that you would be able to pick up from pick up on Android by picking up that SDK. And so that saves developers a lot of time, and it allows them to build really cool experiences. Now we hear about latency. It's one of the first questions we often get asked when talking about streaming. And we have not yet figured out how to overcome the laws of physics, but it's something that the guys back in Seattle are working on. And in the meantime, though, because we're on AWS, we have the benefit of a very, very large cloud infrastructure that we can run this platform on, and we're able to drive that latency down by getting closer to the end users, as well as we've done some pretty cool things with the way that we encode the video to take up less bandwidth and less resources at the encoding time to provide a good experience. And so with the SDK, you're able to adjust where you're using streaming and provide some really cool experiences. And you would be surprised. We've talked to a lot of developers, and today, right now, they're able to do some very, very cool things, and it's just working well. So we would encourage you to try it, and I'd love to hear your feedback. That's it.
Sounds good.
Ian, bring it
Thank you,
back
sir.
to you.
So when we started thinking about what do we want to do at Amazon Game Studios, what do our teams want to focus on, I started thinking about myself as a gamer. Like, I already play Skyrim. I think I play like 7,000 hours already at this point, right? But when I'm not in my home, I'm actually playing a ton of indie games, and you can see these are just some of the games I played in the last couple of weeks: FTL, Plague Incorporated, Siege Hero, XCOM, Angry Birds, Star Wars. I play a lot of this on the run, as many of us do, or sometimes watching alongside somebody in the living room. But I really started to think about, like, can we do something in the middle that's maybe more compelling than what we can do today on the tablet, but not maybe as appointment-driven as something as you see with like a big console title. And this is when I started really thinking, okay, there's something here. At the same time, I was thinking, can I have my cake and eat it too? Can I have that cool, deep experience, but running on something mobile? So our team started thinking about this game, and we got really excited about trying to do something we've never seen on a tablet before. And you can see this is an early piece of concept art where we got excited about thousands of enemies, simple firing mechanics, and our team started getting really excited. We started thinking like, oh, we're really inspired by Lord of the Rings, and we wanted that epic feeling. And so we started prototyping this, and we got to about 12 to 24 to 36 units, and the whole game started tanking, and this was on a fairly high-end tablet. So then I was like, hey, Collin, maybe we should look seriously at this whole AppStream thing, and that's when we started partnering to look at what we could do together and make that experience happen. And so what we did is we made a little movie, because it's a little bit of a stage-by-stage development of what we discovered, how we took a look at streaming, and then maybe show you at the end a little bit of that result after a few months of prototyping. So please, if you can all make sure you can see this, and all feel free to yell out if the audio is not loud enough, but let's just take a look at what we did this year.
When a few of us at Amazon Game Studios began work on our newest game, we wanted to do something epic with lots of characters that created a strong emotional connection with players. We wanted a huge army, but we could only render and simulate a tiny one on tablets. But instead of giving up, we turned to our friends in Amazon Web Services, who had a team working on a powerful new service called AppStream. AppStream is basically a customizable adaptive protocol that adjusts to network conditions on the fly and lets you build compelling experiences and stream them to any device. We thought, great, let's use the power of the cloud. Our first instinct was to stream the whole game from the cloud through AppStream. That worked fine, and while streaming the whole game could be cool, we realized we really weren't using the device for much. Then, when we thought about how it might work for applications with extremely low tolerance for latency, we realized there might be an opportunity to get the best of both worlds. We decided to use AppStream's flexible SDK to power the game via the cloud while keeping the player interaction local. Suddenly, ideas started flowing, and we got really excited at the thought of putting huge armies on the screen and fighting thousands of bad guys. Our team started yelling out, "Helms deep," and "Remember the Alamo," so we knew we were onto something. First steps were to get the game running on AppStream. This was really fast since it's just a PC in the cloud. This is the background of the game you see here, and it's actually running at 55 frames per second, but we wanted to show how easy it is to start working, even though this example here is slow because of the remote desktop and there are no AI running. At the same time, we wanted to see how much we could push to the cloud. Luckily, it only took a couple people a week or so to get things moving, and day to day we saw more and more units on screen, from 700 to 2,000 to 8,000. And then we said, well, let's start blowing things up. All of this was done via AppStream and the Amazon cloud, and it totally freed us from a lot of the current hardware constraints on devices. Next, the team started work on a hybrid client. Essentially, it's like a green screen in a movie, in which we play what's happening in-game in the cloud as a texture on a device. You can see here that the castle and the weapon are all local on the client. As soon as a player fires the weapon, literally everything else happens with the servers in Amazon's cloud and is then sent back to the device. This setup is powerful and useful because since we're writing to a specific hardware configuration in the cloud, not only do we have 10 to 50 times the power of the latest tablet on hand, our team can optimize like we do for console since it's a fixed target, and developers can deploy to any device. So now you've seen the pieces, let's take a look at a slice of the game with all of the pieces working together. So that's a demo we built, and we got such a nice response we decided to make it into a full game. Expect lots of cool new ammo types, brand new enemies, and new landscapes to fight on. Our goal is to show some of the things developers can do with AppStream and the cloud. When it comes to new ideas and how to use streaming, the cloud's the limit.
Great music, huh? Ah, thank you. So the thing, as we mentioned, we used a lot of the local controls on the device and put everything else in the cloud. What you're looking at here is a top-down debug view of our AI editor. And these are just a few of the 100 AIs that we had on screen. We had about 3,000 AIs on screen in that video that you saw that were coming from the distance. Why this is great is if you can even see the little arrows or the little directional notations on these AI, is there's no way you could do this. The power needed to run this on a tablet is just not possible. So this allowed us to both have smart pathing and get a density of enemies on screen. And the best part is this is not running on a high-end tablet. This is running on a mid-range to a low-range device. And we've tested on a number of different devices. And that's what's great about this is you can have greater reach when you use this technology because you don't always need the latest and the greatest. The other thing which was really great for us is we've realized that the response time was a lot better than we could ever have expected. So I think a lot of genres and a lot of types of games that you might rule out right out of the beginning actually have some validity when you think about how to use it with the cloud. So I was very encouraged, and we're actually making this game right now, and we'll have more details as we go forward. Across genres, though, I think there's a lot of applications to the cloud. Like, I'm sure some of you guys are doing more casual games, or you're thinking about social games and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of benefits to the cloud there, too. When you start thinking about how can you go to scale, or if you have some large component like EVE Online has a large character creator, which is just way too much memory. They don't want to store that locally, so they use the cloud to dump that down, create your character, and then you're done with it. You don't have to store it. Also, patching and security also are a lot easier with the cloud. So there's some really great benefits across genre types as well. So that's a little bit about what we did at AGS. I wanted to talk about forward thinking too. Where's this market going? Where's the technology going? And what are we looking at maybe 5 years down the road, right? And so we know that businesses are doing great with the cloud. They have a great handle of the cloud. I think designers and creatives need to maybe catch up a little bit. But the opportunity is there, and as businesses grow, you can see from this quote on GigaOM that the business is driving a lot of this cloud penetration as well, broadband and so on and so forth. The costs, according to KPCB, are coming down 30% annually. So the sort of doubting Thomases about cost and penetration, yeah, it's a real thing. We got to think about that. But I do think in the future it's going to get a lot better. So that's why I'm trying to think down the road. This isn't today. This is where we're going to go when we think of the long tail that the games need to develop. Where are we going to be in a few years, right? So this slide shows one of my favorite games from the recent E3. It's called No Man's Sky. And I honestly, I haven't played it, but I have been paying a lot of attention to it. Why? It's a small team. It's a huge procedural world. Plus, I see dinosaurs and spaceships. So I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to that, right? But what I love about this is you start to think about, okay, how could this combine with other types of new technology? Imagine this procedural world that gets created, right? Now all of us are playing that game. We're storing all that data in the cloud. We become the star of an endless narrative that's based on us, a whole history. Imagine that cloud now taking that data and saying, okay, Greg, you like to play this type of game, so we're going to give you more of this type of experience. Or Collin, you like space battles, so we're going to give you more space battles. I'm just picking at you guys in the crowd. But you can imagine where this is going with all the data and the customization that you could see and using that. And I could even see something like huge space battles that you could either view from planet or take part in. These are the type of what-ifs that gets me really excited as a creative. So League of Legends, obviously I'm sure most of you know the MOBA, but it's basically a team versus team matchup with 4 or 5 different characters and special items. Hugely popular. Millions of people play this. Even more millions watch it. It still kind of blows my mind that there's 10,000 people that will gather and pay $20 to watch people play a game. So there's something to it. But let's think about how do we do this when we think of the cloud. What can we do as creatives when we think about this type of a game, right? Well, imagine that there's the social aspect. There's thousands of people participating, not just re-shoutcasting. That's certainly viable. We already have Twitch TV for some of that, right? But like, what if you could actually participate on a massive scale using the cloud with the social aspect? What about the gamer aspect, right? Say we're 5 of us are a team and we're doing great. And then people are tracking our team, and then we could actually maybe store all that cloud data from either the whole tournament or a specific game, download it onto your local device, play against that favorite team or play alongside that favorite team. I think that notion of kind of playing with the pros is super exciting. I think the fans would love it, but it's something that you'd need to use more technology for. You could also use it just from a selfish perspective. What if the AI was adapting to my play styles, getting better, and then helping train me as a young or new League of Legends or a Dota player, right? You could see that there's a number of ways this works on a number of levels as a player. Super exciting to me. I love the idea of playing alongside some of these teams in these famous tournaments and seeing how I would do. 5 minutes? Okay, I will go fast. Thank you. I'm glad it's not scored because it's only 5. Imagine there's a large-scale NASCAR race that's happening in real time, and we drop you in the middle of it. Or you can load data from a famous game and play alongside that as well, kind of what I was just talking about. What if there was a game in XCOM? You couldn't beat that level, So you download your friend's data, and you see them playing alongside you as you're playing your own game, kind of a ghost image, but actually showing you a way that they got through a particular map. This could expand also to user-generated content, which is, I think, a huge part of the industry moving forward as well. What about poker? Some of you guys might be looking at more casual games or more games like card games like poker. Well, if people are actually paying attention to the World Series of Poker, they could actually store all of those hand data that you see throughout the tournament. You could play alongside particular players or maybe celebrities like Ben Affleck. This is something that's really exciting. And again, I think it speaks to a cross-genre thing. I have a core background, but I really have an interest in some of this more casual and card and indie games as well. What about the world's biggest World Cup? There's 10,000 players competing to play for their favorite team using the power of the cloud. All of a sudden, Argentina versus Brazil has a whole different meaning because now we're on those teams. It's that scale, it's that data storage, and even AI learning to help you be better players. It's super, super exciting to me. Some of us might be thinking, oh, that's cool. That's some serious games. What about educational games? What about kids' games? And this is where I start to get interested too. What if we could use the cloud to kind of flip how we look at education and put it on, what if the tablet becomes your classroom and the curriculum is from the cloud? And imagining what we could do with that from a creative games perspective. We know that the current classroom, there's a lot of physical elements to it. But imagine taking this physical classroom, using the power of the cloud, and now this is the classroom. This is what the kids are learning. They're learning how to program, how to build, city planning, history. Maybe they're learning a language. Maybe they're playing World of Warcraft and they're learning how to speak Spanish. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that we could do that I think are the future of what is coming with this technology. So a little bit of a brief recap. Just 7 years ago, this little thing happened, right? The iPhone. And when it came out, there was a lot of talk about it's a camera, it's all your records in your pocket, and it's productivity. But there wasn't a lot of talk about games. And what's happened in that last 7 years? Well, there's been a huge new industry, and you guys are part of it, right? There's all these new games and these new types of monetization that have come out because of these new devices. And I think we're at a similar inflection point with cloud. And it's not just limited to cloud. Like, think of what we all read about, right? We're thinking about the cloud. What can we do with all the data? Then we're thinking about all these other alternative technologies like augmented reality or virtual reality. And what happens when when the genres and the fields that you're working on collide with these other new technologies? My mind starts to get a little bit blown. And I think that's what's the creative opportunity for all of us, is looking at where we can go. Best part is, I'm sure you guys have even better ideas. I just thought this was a really interesting way to think about what can we do, and where's this industry going, and where do we want to be in 5 years using technology to do brand new things for customers that they have never seen before. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you. Here's some information for you if you are interested in learning more about AppStream. Up top right, there's a link, aws.amazon.com/appstream. And then our game studio at the bottom. And then my email if you want to send me funny pictures, because I like them. Anyway, thanks very much, and I hope this has been inspiring to you. It was really fun to think about, and I encourage you to think about it as we go forward. So thanks very much. Bye-bye.